week 15 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few kickers I look to drop this week. The first guy, Ryan Succop of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Ryan Succop early in the season got off to a great start for this Tampa Bay Buc team, but right now, the last few weeks here, it hasn't been his fault, but he hasn't done anything here. Week 12 at Cleveland, 6 fantasy points. Week 13 versus New Orleans, 5. And Week 14 at San Francisco, he only had 1 fantasy point. So right here, Week 15, I know it's a good matchup versus Cincinnati Bengals in a game that's probably going to be a shootout, possibly. And the Bengals give up the most fantasy points to kickers on the season. But right here, it's not going to be a factor this week here, as Ryan Succop is a guy that many fantasy owners are going to look to, even with the good matchup, because this Tampa Bay Buc offense has definitely struggled and hasn't done anything over the last 3 or 4 weeks here. So right now, still owned in 35% of fantasy leagues here. Succop's a kicker I would drop this week. The next guy is Matt Prater of the Arizona Cardinals. So Matt Prater, I know he's had a good career. We know he's still capable of hitting those 50-plus yard field goals, but he really hasn't gotten the job done as Matt Prater this season here. One of the worst kickers for fantasy football. So the last few weeks here for him, Week 9 versus Seattle, 3 fantasy points. Week 10 at the Rams, 0. Week 11 versus San Francisco, 5. Week 12 versus the Chargers, 7. Week 13 a bye. And Week 14 versus the New England Patriots, 4 fantasy points. So right now he's not getting the job done as Prater. It's not totally his fault. And now with Kyler Murray possibly out for the season here, he's not really a kicker that's going to have much fantasy value and a guy that owners could count on. And third and final kicker I look to drop this week, Jason Sanders of the Miami Dolphins. I know he's on a high-powered offense, and I got a couple questions about Sanders over the last few weeks here, but he's really not cutting it and getting the job done here for fantasy owners. At most, he's getting 6-7 points, it seems like, here is Sanders. So the last few games here for him, Week 8 at Detroit, 8. Week 9 at Chicago, 5. Week 10 versus Cleveland, 9. Week 12 versus Houston, finally a blow-up game with 13. Week 13 at San Francisco, 6. Week 14 at the Chargers, where they give up the 5th most fantasy points, is the Chargers to kickers, 7. And now Week 15, a tough matchup at Buffalo that gives up the second least amount of fantasy points to kickers. And plus, obviously, the bad weather, and it's a Saturday night ball game, which spells disaster for kickers for the most part. So right now, not getting the job done much. Inconsistent kicker, even though on a high-powered offense. He's a kicker I would drop this week. So that's a few kickers I look to drop for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.